I just tried to start recording. Okay, I think it is recording. Okay, so I know you guys are all veterans of the scanning process, so we're going to try to introduce some new materials for you, and hopefully you will come away with at least one new thing that you've learned. The aims for the training are we actually built this training around common errors that we've been seeing, even among veterans and people who've been doing this for a while. So the aims are that you all will be able to know how to check your test booklets and answer sheets for errors as soon as you get them. You will be able to troubleshoot one specific error that happens a lot and calculate your own data upload percentage to ensure that you're on track to hit 98%. And then understand the Infinite Canvas and Athena data connections and how those can sometimes cause problems as well. Here is the agenda for today. We are going to start out with a little pop quiz. So question number 1, you are batch processing and an error message pops up. What should you do? Feel free to yell out your answers.
B.
Okay, Matt says B as in boy.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I think it depends. If it's something you don't recognize, I would go with D to email you guys first. Mm-hmm. But if it's something that you're familiar with and is really not really going to affect batch processing, then I would just click B as in boy.
Yeah, I normally click B.
Yeah, I think most people are clicking B, and it can be a problem because, especially if it's a weird error message that we've never seen before and you click OK, we're not sure how that's actually going to affect the data. And it could actually compromise the data integrity or quality that we're uploading to Athena. And ultimately, there really shouldn't be any error messages popping up. So, and because Shelley and I are not there on the ground processing with you, we can't monitor error messages and see, you know, whether it's okay to click OK or whether it could be a big problem. So ideally, we'd like you just to email us, and that email goes to both of us, and let us know when the error message pops up. And that way we can, you know, we'll address it as quickly as we can and hopefully not, you know, not delay your processing at all. But we still want to know about it so that we can resolve it and take it to Axis, which is the company that built the software, and they can actually look at what's going on. Because we did notice a few error messages last IA cycle that were actually problematic and needed to be addressed right away rather than clicking OK.
Does anyone have an example of an error message that they've seen that they consider to be one that's more of the, this is a common error message, so I click OK?
I can't think of any right now that comes to mind.
So what we want to make sure is, like, if there's an error message that you've seen before and you don't think it's causing an issue, so you just routinely click OK, our concern is just that because it's an error message, there's something triggering it, and a lot of the error messages that come up are very generic and general and can feel like they're not a big issue. But we saw some data integrity issues last IA cycle that corresponded with schools seeing error messages. So one in particular is error processing tests. So if you see that error message, our recommendation is actually for you to just stop and reach out to us immediately so that we can take a look at it and figure out what triggered it.
And we heard from another school recently that their batch summary report pops up even when they're not done batch processing. So let us know if you're also experiencing that, because we want to make sure that that's also not affecting the data. And I'm actually going to be doing some testing on that workstation tomorrow to make sure it's not a problem.
Okay, yeah,
I have been experiencing that.
Before.
What? What was that?
Oh, I said that that's actually happened a couple times on my workstation too. I just figured it was because maybe I had started a smaller batch and then another one came in and they summarized the smaller one and it just kept running. But yeah, that's happened before.
Okay.
And this is Karen, the same thing that she said. Like, it has happened before, but I figured it was the same thing because it would be like a batch that I started and I added another batch, and I figured it was just summarizing the one I did the first time before I processed the next batch.
Okay.
Rachel, do you know if the other schools that you were testing with last week, if that was potentially the issue?
It could be. I didn't even think to ask that, so I will definitely ask.
Okay. Thanks, guys. That's helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. All right. Question 2. You arrive in the morning and batch processing is still going on. What should you do? Feel free to yell out what you think the answer is.
I think B.
B or D?
D as in boy.
B as in boy.
I say B also.
B also. Yes, B is correct. You should definitely, we have people who do A. They just feel like if they delete everything and just rescan everything, that will solve the problem. And while it may solve the problem, generally we can help you solve the problem in a faster time period than just rescanning everything. So yeah, B, it's probably stuck on one exam. And if you kind of stare at the processing for a while, you can see where it's repeating. And you should write down that exam's information, stop processing, go find that TIFF file, and find out what is causing it. It could be an extra page. It could be a folded over corner or something like that. And what should you do once you find out what the problem is?
Well,
Anyone?
if it's something you can solve, like say it's one exam that was scanned incorrectly, you can rescan that exam, I would assume, and process it.
Right. If it's all, all exams in a batch have a blank page, then in that case you may need to delete the whole batch and rescan. But first you should clean your scanner and make sure that once you start rescanning that the issue has been resolved. Okay. Question 3. A teacher tells you that one of her students is not appearing, I should say not appearing in her Athena report. What could be the cause of this?
It depends. If the student name is listed in Athena, but there's no data, then it would be A. But if a student is not listed at all in Athena, then it would be B.
Okay. Anyone else? This is kind of a tricky one that I'm not sure we really have explained clearly in the past. But with IA4, typically the student already has data from IAs 1 through 3 already in Athena. unless they just joined. If they already have any kind of data from this current year in Athena, that student will never, ever disappear from Athena. Even if they've withdrawn, they'll continue to appear in all the reports for the rest of the school year. So even if you delete the student from the roster or the student's IA4 exam wasn't turned in, they still will appear in the report, just with no data in it. The same thing for a blank test. So the correct answer is actually D. The student is enrolled in more than one section with the same IA subject. And when this happens, Athena has to, let's say the student is enrolled in 2 different sections and both have an IA subject of math. Athena randomly has to decide which section the student is going to appear in, because the student won't appear in both. So Athena might randomly decide, oh, let's put him in Miss Smith's section, when actually he's supposed to be in Miss Baker's section. So Miss Baker says, oh, my student is missing. It's probably because he's in a different section. Or sometimes you might get a section in Athena that only has 1 student in it, and that's because you forgot to move the student to the new roster or something like that. And because Athena never deletes a student, it will keep that student in that old section, even if that old section doesn't exist or you ended him or what have you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this is what we see this happening a lot, where the student moves to a new section and you just forget to end them in the old section. And then he's suddenly missing from the section in Athena. It's because he's in a different one.
So if we find, I mean, I don't think we have anyone in that case right now. We fixed something we did. But if that had happened and the student wasn't, coming up, so we would have to fix it in IC, and I'm assuming alert you, and then you guys re-upload the current data to IC?
That's a good question. So Infinite Campus data updates to Athena every night around 1 a.m. So you can correct it, and you should see the correction appear the next morning. If it doesn't, if you did correct it and then it didn't appear in Athena, then you should reach out to us.
Okay.
Because there could be, occasionally we do have problems where IC uploads have been turned off accidentally. So you should always see your corrections in Athena the next morning.
Thank you.
Question 4, a scholar runs out of space for a writing portion. What should he or she do?
C.
C, anyone else?
Yeah, we tend to do C as well.
Okay, and why C?
Because we can't scan anything that doesn't have a barcode.
Yeah.
Right. That is correct. It will definitely mess up your scan if you scan in a random line sheet of paper that doesn't have a barcode. So have the student write, or make sure the teachers know this. And we actually have some teacher instructions for IA administration. So if you are having trouble or you think your teachers could benefit from additional clarification, I can show you where that is on the server. And question number 5, during IA cycles, how frequently should you clean your scanner?